All right, I call this special meeting of the M.S.A.D 49 School Board of Directors to order. Roll call, please.
Here. It says special.
Boyden.
Here.
Hadley.
Here.
Davis Wilson.
Here.
Kimona.
Here.
King Flood. T. Flood.
Here.
Knox.
Here.
Nicolaya.
Here.
Wolver.
Here.
Bauer.
Here.
Weeds. Here. And White.
Here.
And Kate Ledger. Here.
Of the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Musical chairs.
So we will go to the Lawrence High School, Miss Janess tonight first.
So I'm here with Jessica Cameron. She is a sophomore at Lawrence. She's a drum major for marching band, so she has something to talk to you about for our show.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to say thank you to Mr. Knox and the rest of the school board for allowing me to be here to talk to you. It's a great pleasure. First of all, I would like to invite you all to our first home show. It's the first show of the season. It's on September 21st at 5 p.m. on Kai's Field. Admission will be $7 for adults, $5 for students, and then our lovely band boosters are allowing any elementary student who is in band or is interested in it to go to the show for free, so that it's lovely. All families that would wish to learn more about the marching band and just the music department in general, because it's a lovely family and I'd love any child to be a part of it or learn about it, can go see Ms. Janess or Mr. Fields or any staff about it. And our show this year is called Welcome to the Machine. Our show shirt is right there. It's about independence and revolution and really finding ourselves in that. And if I haven't caught your eyes yet, I have found that our band boosters will be providing our delicious fried Oreos. So if you have a little sweet tooth, that would be great. I also have some awesome pictures taken by Joshua Lund to pass out to all the board members.
Thank you very much for that. Hopefully we'll be able to attend that.
While she's doing that, I would just like to say that I went for the first time with Mr. Bowers on August 16th, and it was the end of the camp week, perhaps, and they did an amazing job out on that field. I was very impressed, and they seemed very excited, so that was awesome that I got to go.
If I could add something in on that.
And Jeff was there too, actually.
Actually, and I've been involved indirectly with the band for 8 years, 7 years, something like that. And these kids start off actually before band camp, and they work hundreds of hours, and we only have one home show every other year. Last time we had a first show of the season, there was 4 bands counting ours. The ball draw was last night, and there's 9 bands, including ours, this year for the first show of the season. It's going to be a fantastic event, and I encourage not only all the board, but all the community to come out and support it.
Nice. All right. Thank you again for that. I appreciate that. So we'll go into the approval of the minutes. Will the M.S.A.D 49 Board of School Directors vote to accept the minutes of the August 19, 2019 board meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Booten, seconded by Mr. Newbauer. It's moved and seconded to accept the minutes of the August 19, 2019 board meeting. Any discussion? All those in favor? 9. All those opposed? Abstain? 1, 2, 3, 4. 9, 4, 0. All right, so citizen input. Tonight would be anything that's on the agenda. You're welcome to speak, and just please be respectful as usual. Anybody have any comments on citizen input? Seeing none. So we'll go into old business. Yep.
I think he said 9
904. I think I did that last time, too. Thank you.
Actually, I saw Mrs. Harson's face.
Not opposed, so yes, thanks, yep. All right, so old business, discussion nepotism policy, BBFB, and administrative procedures. You have in your packet, basically, this is from last meeting, we discussed nepotism policy about potentially doing some revisions and, whatnot. As the board asked, I did speak with council regarding the policy by way of update and some of our way of building some safeguards into the policy. The result of that was this procedure, administrative procedure. I sent this to you guys, and I think it was in your packet. I'd like to just walk down through this. The suggestion was to, I did also get a sample policy for nepotism that we could build, bring to the policy committee. And hopefully look at updating that. It has a lot more language in it. It references a statute and it defines board members specifically. Council did mention that the majority of our policy kind of is a spell out of what board members and anybody should look at as kind of things that could impact them a lot. This is, the procedure is suggested to go outside of policy for that reason, is because you'd rather not have something in policy that doesn't involve the law. But it's something that the board has recognized that we want a safeguard in place by way of the situation that we're in right now, situation that we have. So I'll just walk down through this and then see how many questions that we have. So just from the beginning, I guess I'll start with one that involves primarily non-teaching and non-principal positions, so co-curricular will be one for that one. Just walking down through that, that's we would, administrator would be assigned to oversee the hiring process, and B is relating to teaching and principal positions, hiring and contract renewal. And that one is, if you look at the bottom, the last bullet point would be approval nomination. The administrator assigned to oversee the hiring process and the superintendent shall both sign the agreement for that one, because there is a signed agreement by statute. C is the probationary teacher nominations. Again, that would be similar. Board chair would direct another different personnel. This one defines the date of May 1st. And then at the last bullet, it is the same as the last one is, there'd be two signatures on the employment agreement. D is non-renewal. In the event that we ever got into a non-renewal for a continuing contract teacher non-renewal, very similar. Board chair would be involved with the assistant superintendent or other nominating personnel. Again, going down through, there is an italic in here. Also, this one references some dates as well that fits into notifications by way of statute. This one has an italic, and this would be a question of the board. And there's a couple others in here too. And then go on to E. This would be principal, if you ever had a situation with a principal with contract renewal. It's very similar to the other ones with different dates listed in it. And this would involve the board will consider the recommendation of the designated administrator and superintendent in an executive session. That's kind of what spells out the difference in the principal one. On to page 4. The last bullet in that one, for the principal one, it would be similar. There'd be two signatures involved in that one as well. So going on to 2 would be evaluation. Pretty straightforward. There would be someone else involved. And then again, this is another italic. There would be some sort of consideration for the council, and I can just speak on that a little bit as far as, that would be primarily a legal review, and it wouldn't be a suggestion of the evaluation or a suggestion of what action the designated administrator or the superintendent would make. It would just be by way of looking at it to say, is this a legal thing? Is this what's best? Does this need to go forward to the full board? Does it not? It's kind of an oversight thing. The review word in there is kind of, it almost makes it sound like that the council would be doing some of it, and that's not the intent. So I think there's some language that we can put in there that if we wanted to. So then keep going on through. The last one, that was the last one of the evaluation. Obviously, we do informal observations by way of administrators and the superintendent. This paragraph just defines that is still, we could still do that. Yeah, let me just, if you don't mind, let me just go through the whole thing, and then we'll ask questions at the end. So 3, investigation. If for some reason there was an investigation, this is a situation very similar to, we would delegate to another appropriate person, and then there would be, legal counsel would review anything related to that, documents or information, different types of scenario, but wouldn't necessarily be involved directly. And then 4 would be grievances. So grievances, clearly, if there was any type of grievance, we would typically consult with legal counsel, and then the board chair would likely be involved. Pretty basic concept of that one. And then another scenario would be request for leaves and transfers. Pretty straightforward. If we had some sort of reduction in force, there would be some sort of involvement with the superintendent by way of notification, and we would likely get contact legal counsel in those situations. Typically do anyway. And then if we had a department head, number 6, department head selection, there would be, if there was an application for a member, they would, very similar to the other ones, and the family was selected for vacancy, there'd be 2 signatures on that agreement as well. It could be something like that. And then clearly, as we all know, there could be unanticipated situations. And that's another benefit of this document, because as most of you know, policies, it was 2 readings. It has to go through a committee. There's 2 readings and by way of time. And this is a document that is not a statutory requirement, and it can be modified as a situation arises. So I will take questions if anybody has any. Obviously, we need to address some of the italic in here. I think there's 4 or 5 of them. I can start talking about those unless somebody has questions now.
Check those, and
I have one about
Yes,
the
sir.
italics
Yep.
under the evaluation process, section 2. If we added the word process at the end of the sentence, wouldn't that solve the language issue?
Outside legal counsel involvement in review or evaluation.
Process.
Yeah,
Because at that point, that narrows the scope of what legal counsel is doing.
that would certainly be an option. Yep, and that's for the board to decide, but that's certainly, we could add, I had something similar to that, but yeah, that's an option, yep. Yep,
It just says, notify the board chair. I understand the purpose of that, but I think we should change the language to the board. I think that this document then just speaks to that and not about that the full board needs to be made aware of the situation. Typically, yes, that's what would happen with the board chair, but I think we should have a policy where it says the board and not the board chair.
yeah, I did ask that question just to address that. Some of the examples in here can be, very almost, I don't want to say day-to-day, but some of these, taking it to the board level, it's an option, but
Well, first
by
of
way
all,
of
right.
it certainly, it could take time. It could delay the process as well. and there was another reason too, but I can't, yep.
Yeah, but in our bylaws, and this goes back to having a more robust discussion about our bylaws, but in our bylaws, we never actually call out, the board chair has no specific role such as that this is laid out aside to run the meetings. And I think until we work through that as an organization, I mean, as a board, to understand what role we want the board chair to properly assume and how the information gets designated, we end up constantly in a situation where one person knows more than the rest of the board and other information doesn't get shared. I'm not speaking about you specifically, Sean. I'm just saying the history of the board, that's the way it's been run, and I think that we need to seriously rethink some of this for health and longevity, and more participation. So for that reason, I just don't think that the whole document needs to say the board chair the entire time. I think it doesn't support transparent understanding communication, because what you would ultimately want in this situation is that the entire board would know. They would be made aware of it. It's
Yeah,
within our right to know it, and it is our right to know it. So I think that language, we need to seriously consider
I would
that.
just say that, like I mentioned, a lot of, I did ask this question.
Yeah.
And that a lot of it was by way of time, and some of these examples are, you know, it can happen, and it doesn't spell out in here that the board chair can't notify, you know, an executive session or whatnot, can't notify the board. So that was a question I asked, and it was very specific to that. So anybody else have? Yep.
I was wondering, starting in C, it talks about the designated administrator and the superintendent will make the nomination, and I wondered if the purpose is around nepotism and to protect that. I wondered how having the superintendent as part of that conversation seemed, who would then be a superior of the designated administrator. It seemed like that to me wouldn't feel like we were really protecting that designated administrator to be able to truly make a decision the way that they felt best. So I wondered why, because in B and A, the designated administrator is the only person, the superintendent isn't making that decision together, but in C, D, and E, they are put together, and it felt like, I wondered if that maybe left some gray area.
So what you're saying, I'm just trying to, so C, probationary teacher nomination.
In the fourth bullet, the designated administrator and the superintendent will make the nomination decision. So what you have is a designated administrator who is by nature a subordinate of the superintendent, and in a situation where they're going to make a decision to avoid nepotism, there's just a possible conflict there and influence for that person to feel like they can't make the decision that they want if the superintendent is involved. So I might recommend that we think about.
Yeah, I didn't ask
the
that question.
superintendent.
And I don't know why it's different in C than it isn't, like I think you mentioned. So B, it mentions,
Right, and then, but starting with C, D, E, it includes it, so I didn't know.
yeah.
Maybe you know this, offhand. Is there anything in Title 20A that requires the superintendent to be the person nominating teachers?
Yes, it says that in B.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
So they can't, but do they, yeah,
That would be my thought as to why it
right.
would
So
have
they
to
could,
be there.
is there a step for the recommendation to be made and the superintendent to certify it, to be compliant with the statute, but to allow for a decision to be made without influence of, I don't want to overly confuse it, it just seemed like an area where if we're going through all this trouble to avoid it.
But it is that the way that the statute is written, and also the way that we're governed, is that the superintendent brings it to the board. We've never had a second. We've never said, in the absence of X, and I don't know what the state would certify, because when you have to send in paperwork, right, the superintendent needs to certify that, correct?
Right.
But what we send, or what is provided to us, could have a step before that for if there is a conflict, that the designated administrator is the signer for that person. And it's still, the nomination still comes from the superintendent to the
right.
school board.
That's right.
But the decision-making
Right.
was recommended by someone else.
Right.
In a step before that.
Yeah.
And it would raise a major flag if the recommendation and then what came to the board was different. And there would be a step for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just looked at Title 20A, 13201, nomination and election of teachers. The superintendent shall nominate all
Yeah,
teachers.
yeah, that's
So
what it is, yeah.
That is a requirement.
Right.
So-
But we could make sorry, Sean, a
Mhm.
before step that says.
I would agree.
Yeah.
And the recommendations come from the supervisors in the building or the principals. The principals conduct the evaluations, the observations, all of those evaluative pieces come from the direct supervisor.
Yep. So some of the others, page 3 was consider outside counsel. This is another one. Council would evaluate information, facts, the process, things like that. They wouldn't be involved with. So my suggestion was to add in the second bullet to be reviewed by legal counsel, some sort of wording like that. So that way we could add that in there, but I guess it's up to you guys. And we don't have to vote on this tonight, but we certainly put this together in as much detail as possible. If we have follow-up questions, we certainly can do that, and come back for next time, so whichever the board wants to do, so. And then page 4, the other, unless somebody wanted to talk about that one. Does anybody have any opinions on page 3, bullet 2, 4, 6? Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, it's just a general thing, not specific to those bullets, but also, this one deals specifically with the superintendent. I'm wondering if, in general, we should just adopt a policy about if you are overseeing, like, a broader policy that has to do with it, if you're overseeing, let's just use an example, the principal, right, in a high school, right? Like, you would want the same process in place. Does that make sense? Based upon what they were able to do within the school. But we currently don't have anything like that. So I am wondering if some of the language needs to be addressed in a broader way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would answer that as it doesn't. We talked about what we should do, whether we should put it in policy, we shouldn't. I think I printed out roughly, I did get a message from council, but it's basically, policies, a lot of times you put policies so that way they jump off the page.
No, I understand,
for
but you're
you.
misinterpreting what I'm saying, which
Okay.
is, should we broaden, I understand.
procedure?
Should we broaden this procedure, exactly, to be more encompassing
Yeah.
of it in general, because typically, like, a nepotism policy or procedure, sorry, in this case, would be for an entire organization, not just for one person. And so, why this one obviously is comprehensive for a superintendent, I am wondering in general if we need to think about that. Why
Yeah,
we
I
would just
think
put
you
one in
could.
place for a superintendent and not for anybody else.
You could, yeah.
I mean, they already have it laid out here, and some would apply to only a superintendent, and some would apply, I think, a general thing for, people in a management position, and list them, blah, 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 right?
Yeah,
It would mostly be administrators. I mean, that's really who we're talking about, is administrators,
yeah,
so.
I don't think that's needed right now. I mean, this is specifically for this situation.
No,
We
I'm
did put
aware.
it- Okay.
I'm aware why it's for, I'm just saying, if
You
we're gonna
think
spend the
long-term,
time.
something
Yeah,
long-term?
right, if we're gonna spend the time on this, we might as well do it correctly, by making sure that all administrators are
And
covered by
again,
that.
if you get into doing something like that, I mean, this document, you could be miles long, different scenarios for this administrator and that.
No, it's a general, I mean, typically the language for that tends to be pretty general. It's like, you usually don't oversee your spouse. And in those cases, you should do X, Y. I mean, I think we're just really talking about administrators, and this is pretty clear because of there's a lot here because of the duties of the superintendent, but statutory duties of a superintendent. I don't think that needs to be the same for administrators.
I will say too, the policy, the sample policy that they did provide me too, it does involve some of the other roles within administration. It doesn't only speak to the school board members. So I think that would likely be a policy, part of the policy. I know some other districts include that in the policy. Extenuating certain circumstances, it would come before the board. One of them was, I think actually one of the questions in here, one of the first boxes is, do we have something on our application to notify the board,
Right.
notify the district?
Yeah.
I think that's something that we would need to update with this,
Right.
with adopting this procedure. But I think that's a good point. It's probably something that would get in the policy that we should consider putting something
Right,
relative to.
just broadly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So I guess we're on page 3, and I guess my suggestion is, again, for that one, the second bullet, to be reviewed by legal counsel. I think I can take some edits to this draft tonight and then finalize it for 2 meetings from now. And then any questions that we may need to have, and just run it by the council from then and move from there. But I think, I don't know what people are thinking, but as far as the continuing contract teacher renewal, we would put that through as having legal counsel. And it does mention the grievance process, so we can discuss that for a while, but that's primarily, you wouldn't want to bring something to the board and then have it grieved out. It's almost redundant and very inefficient, so probably that one step would save you a lot of time, in my opinion. So that's what my recommendation is for that. And then on page 4, going down to 2 evaluation, consideration of outside legal counsel. My thought was yes, and doing something like the process, I can modify that to add that in there. Additionally, the informal observations, outside legal counsel on the last sentence, should review performance issues and assistance with improvement plan. So again, that's the council is hired by the board, so they would look at it not by way of what's in it, but by way of if it's actually legal and it's effective for the board. Again, all of this can go to the board level as by way of the chair being involved. That's the conversation that is the driver. You wouldn't want this procedure without someone from the board to represent the board. So I think that's a healthy one to have in there. So my recommendation is to include that one, as well as include the one above that. The box on page 5. So the edit here was the second paragraph down, the second bullet, consider outside legal counsel. I had adding in oral outside legal counsel, get rid of consider and just put or outside legal counsel to investigate the allegations. I think that's something that we could do a couple different things, either decide on it or it could go before the board. The board chair could say, I need to bring this to the board to decide, and then that you could the board could make a decision at that point. Couple different options there, but my recommendation is after administrator, comma, or outside legal counsel to investigate. And that pretty much covers the box. And we're going to 6.
Well,
Yes. Yep.
I had just a couple of questions on going through the discipline. It says, obviously this is a touchy subject, and if the superintendent is supervising somebody,
Sure.
and the complaint comes to them. And I was wondering about adding the superintendent and the second person administrator should notify the board, just so there's 2.
There's essentially
And it
this one.
also takes complying with the superintendent, but just to make sure.
Yep.
Assistant
That's an
Not
option.
reliant on self-reporting.
Exactly,
Yes.
we all like to think we're wonderful, but you know what, if it's my kid, I'm gonna be honest, and say, oh, you know, and I think just clarifying that there's two avenues.
For the number 3 one would be,
Yeah.
would be a board notification.
Yep. Yeah, and
That'd be an
then
option.
the second part I had on that, and this goes back to my nursing, is anything that, because we're all mandated reporters, and I come from background of mandated reporters, and unfortunately, in healthcare, I was involved in a situation where we did have to bring the state in because something happened. And we did everything right, the nurse was removed, blah, 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 but the one thing that we were kind of dinged on is because even though the administrator notified and my supervisor notified, I didn't notify, and all of us were involved, so I'm wondering if that needs to be added as far as the superintendent or their designee. I don't know how that works in this regulatory environment, so.
So is that on number 3, is that what you said?
That's down here. It gets into mandating reporting, like should something happen with a child.
Oh,
And
right.
we do
Right.
have a procedure in place
Mhm.
internally, and it's actually, it came from Drummond and Winsome, and there's a process where the person taking the initial report
Right.
reports to the supervisor, and their supervisor has 24 hours to respond back,
Mhm.
whether or not the report was made to the agency, and that
Okay.
person making the report signs off on it, that's all, that would be internal.
Yeah, and that was just, and as I
Yes.
said, I come from healthcare, which is incredibly regulated and whatnot, and so I just know from personal experience, we were all responsible. It didn't matter if
We are all
the
responsible.
powers that be, you also as the person observing whatever you thought you were observing were ultimately responsible. So I just wanted to clarify that it wasn't just up to the superintendent to make a report.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
it sounds like we have yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Typically, it comes out of the buildings,
Okay, so what does everybody think about that one as far as adding board chair? So for this one, just blanket, that's required? Does everybody think that's I could put that on the draft for next time? Everybody think that's somewhat, or maybe we can decide on it then? I'm not seeing any no's, so that's good.
I don't really understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Under 3, adding after 1, 2, 3, 4, after the 4th bullet,
If the allegation, can you read it? If the
in situations, that's paragraph. After the 4th bullet, add a bullet, board chair shall notify the board in this situation.
I actually think that the language needs to read, will notify the board chair, who will notify the board in every place where the board chair is listed. I'm just gonna continue to say, I'm gonna be kind of a stickler about not having a draft that says that, because if we don't put that in policy, we are totally dependent upon our board chair being a good ethical player, and that's not always what happens. So I just think, if we put that in a procedure, I think we need to make it clear, because this is something that could have a fair amount of potential blowback on the board, and for the board not to be made aware of that, and for it not to be clear, we're just asking for trouble we don't need to invite.
If I could, and I know this relates to me personally, but outside of that, I think where Peter might be coming from, and I think Sean has expressed this, is it's the timing of it. So you
I
have
get
a
it.
situation where you immediately put someone out on administrative leave. It's immediate. If a person is escorted out of a place. That needs to happen before a board has time to convene and hold an executive session. A person needs to be able to take that information and direct some other personnel, some other supervisory personnel to proceed with it. And there are some situations, unfortunately, things like that happen.
There's disagree, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that if that does happen, it needs to be, the board needs to be notified. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that the board chair isn't the first contact. I'm saying we need to have a procedure that says in writing, and the board chair will notify. Yes, exactly. It needs to be written and such.
So I'll give you an example of what Kara's saying. An unfortunate situation comes up, somebody has to be escorted off, and we hear about it on the street before we hear about it internally.
That's
That's
right.
embarrassing.
That's right.
And
I
it makes us look
fully
inept.
understand.
Yeah, and
So
it's,
that would be the purpose of that, that's secondary communication.
but more
with
importantly,
the
that
administrator.
it's in writing. There's no, the problem is in the past, there's been a little bit wiggle room for interpretation. And I want to really narrow that wiggle room for interpretation. So this is a good starting point.
Yeah, and my thought on that would be, notification of the board does not mean that you need to wait for us to respond.
That's right,
for us to
notification.
act.
That's what I had. We'll
saying.
notify.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
notify. So I think that needs to get added in every place where the board chair has for that, to make it very clear that's the purpose.
We don't have a role in the decision-making at that point. It's just, if something like that does occur, there needs to be a method for making sure we're all
Right.
up to speed.
Exactly.
So what I can do is, I can get with council and see where we can fit that in, whether it's a blanket
Yeah.
blanket statement.
Right,
or if
blanket
it's
statement
unique
is
or
fine,
whatever.
or added
Okay.
is whatever, but
Right.
clear. Yeah.
So that puts us at page 6. I don't think there's anything on page 6. So what I'll do is, if everybody's okay, I will modify this for 2 or whatever, and then get it back. Yep. But everybody's comfortable. No other questions on that then?
I would just like to kind of reiterate what Tara's saying, is that it does seem like an awful lot of work and an awful lot of people for one person, and that probably the likelihood, I mean, I know in this one situation it happened, but the likelihood of a principal overseeing a family member is probably, when you think about just pure numbers, numerically, the likelihood is higher that a principal will oversee a
Yes.
teacher who's a spouse or a child or, grandparent, I don't know, anything, is that if we're doing all this work and we're paying the lawyers to go over this with us and we're doing all these things, it would seem good if we could get all our nepotism all done in one fell
And
swoop.
I think
Yes.
that policy's you'll see that, yep. I didn't bring the policy just for the sake of muddying the
Yeah.
waters, but yep, I think yep.
I'm just trying to save us money.
Right, yep. Yeah, I think you'll see that in there, and we'll put that in there to the fall, yep.
I can ask
Yep.
one more question. What is, so putting this off 2 more weeks, what is this going to do to the timing of the situation that we have currently?
It doesn't, I don't think that there's really any risk to it. I mean, I think the biggest thing is we recognize that we're putting some safeguards in. The board is comfortable with the situation that we're under based on 2.5 weeks ago, whenever we met last time. We outlined what any situation that we have, and this is by way of a documented safeguard. I think, in my opinion, if there was a lot of red flags tonight, then that would probably be an issue. But I don't see a lot of red flags based on this document. And I think we did a pretty good job with it, so, yeah. Exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's the. Anything else on that one? All right, so we'll stay in old business, the discussion of the budget information. Budget passed the district budget meeting on last Thursday, the 29th. It's going to referendum on September 12th. The question and answer, the fact sheet is online under the news section on the district website. And the voting times and locations are on there. It's under the calendar. The Q&A, the budget is posted online, has been for a while. The Q&A sheet, question and answer sheet is online on the banner page. And I think that's most of it.
Put out a call, use the school
Yep.
messenger.
There was a robocall for the district budget meeting, and we plan to do this robocall again next week.
Scheduled for Tuesday.
Yep.
If that works.
And yeah, so we're gonna disseminate information, possibly some other information to teachers, households, things like that, potentially a letter, maybe a Q&A, things
Thank you. Yeah.
we're gonna be looking at too. But if anybody has any questions, so that all the information is online. And any questions about that, if you want a copy of it, it's online, you can print it out, or go to the superintendent's office, they can get you one. I don't know of anything. Yep.
Okay, so I heard for a communication plan that we're gonna have a robocall,
Yes.
but then who's gonna make the decision? Is it you, Roberta, about what could potentially be mailed out?
We don't intend to do a mailing.
Okay, but it was
We
going,
made those documents available. We may send home a letter, just an informational letter to families through students.
so what would be the trigger for that happening? Are you
Meaning-
saying you're gonna be making that decision, Sean? Because that's what I'm
Yeah.
talking about here. We need to make that decision, not
Right.
one person needs to make that
That's
decision.
why we're talking about this.
No, no,
is that-
I know. That's
that,
why I'm
we-
bringing it up.
The decision is more about printing copies and putting them in the hands of the students and having the students bring them home versus just posting the documents online. So we have the budget, the version 3 of the budget up online on that banner page,
Mhm.
and we have the Q&A up there electronically. And maybe just in the school messenger call home, you know, I could reference all 3 documents. I guess it's a matter of
I'm not-
deciding what we're gonna.
Yeah,
put
I'm
in
not
the hands of the
opposed to
students.
printing it out. I guess it'd be good to know the cost, for us to know the cost and the time and the effort for it to,
That's a single sheet that we can run right in our schools. It's just philosophically, you know, do we want to send those home with students or just let parents know that the
Right.
information's available on our website?
Yeah, you can do a couple different things, so, yeah.
So just quick math, 6 cents a copy, 2,000 kids, $1,200, right? Or is it $120? But
I don't know the
for-
6 cents,
for-
but
It's about 6 cents a copy
Okay.
for plain black and white. But then, I don't know about what everyone else's experience is, however, my own experience with the kids bringing stuff home, it's a low success rate getting to the parents, right? So,
Jeff!
I'm
don't
just
think
saying, you know, the risk reward here
Mhm.
for printing it and sending it home, the reward seems low. But did we distribute the fact sheet to all the town clerks?
The fact sheet to the town clerks?
Yes.
We have not done that.
Yeah, we
The
should-
Q&A.
I thought that's what we said we wanted to do, which
The
is
question also.
To the
to the town clerks.
town clerks.
Because the
To
towns are,
post it?
yeah,
Yeah.
the towns are
Yeah.
receiving a lot of questions as well.
Yes.
So, you know, if the information was at the town office,
Sure, I mean, I think it's a good idea. We had talked about some teachers' sites or teacher rooms or things like that. But I think that's a good, right, my opinion would be, yeah, if everybody else.
Get it out to the people that aren't so connected to the school district,
Yeah.
you know.
Especially where everyone's paying their tax bills right now, I was just at my town office
So-
today, you know, so this would be a
We'll
good
get
time.
there tomorrow.
And then you could reference that in the robocall, but they're also available at the town office.
Thank you. But I see.
I'm sure the
Yes.
town offices will be.
Very happy.
All right, will do.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely, well, so
Is it just the fact sheets or?
I think we
We'll
should
send
have
the
the Q&A too.
Okay.
Yeah, both of those.
How about the Facebook page commenting that they can pick a copy up at their town offices, because I feel like we're double dipping if we send a letter home to our students if we're gonna do the robocall. So that seems a little monotonous to me, but I do think that there are many people that reach social media that may go to the town office for a copy of it specifically, if we could get it up on the social media sites. Like, I know Albion will put it on theirs, but if the M.S.A.D 49 puts it on theirs, it might reach more people than just parents.
So, letting them know where it is.
That
if
they
it's-
could pick
yeah.
up copies at their town
Town
offices
office.
if we're gonna deliver them, and they could reach out for,
Mhm.
it would be reaching more people than just the parents of the students that we have.
Right, because typically our communication plan has been the booklet, right, which,
Which
right,
has gone to every household.
which, right, and since we're in a different world now, we need a different communication plan.
Yeah, the Q&A in the budget is right on we put it right on the banner
Yeah.
page, so it doesn't even move, so I thought that was a good thing, so you can't miss it, so,
No,
yeah.
it's good.
What about asking the clerks to put it on the town websites with a link to the Q&A, to
Yeah.
M.S.A.D 49? Because I know a lot of people do check Facebook before anything, and they would go to their town site. We
We
should
can-
say printing it as well.
We can ask them to,
Yeah.
like what's in my, yeah, I have it linked in
Yeah.
my email that
kind
says
of
where it is, yeah. I might be able to-
Organically directed that way, so.
Yep. And, okay, yep.
For the fact sheet, okay. So
Thank
copies
you.
to be posted, yes, and we'll make some extras to
I
have
think that
available for.
probably linked to the Q and A. I don't think it really, Q and A has a lot of information, the fact sheet has a lot of information too, so you probably could do either one, that's what I'm thinking, yep.
Cool. Thank you.
Speaking of town offices, so we had our warrant articles get reviewed by our council prior to signing them, and typically we have election on Tuesday, and ironically, our warrant articles still said Tuesday on them, but the date was accurate, so we checked with council, and we just, the town clerks are just putting a sign next to the warrants at the town office. And also, there's a notice on Tuesday, just in case somebody thinks it's on Tuesday. The September 12th date is accurate, that was on there. So it was the warrants that we signed, and yeah. Just to let everybody know that all the dates are accurate, and yep,
Generated by council.
yep, yep.
Okay.
I hope they're not gonna charge us. Just saying.
Anything else on the budget? Seeing none, okay, so we'll go on. So before we go into any of these next ones, I'll just remind everybody, I know it's been a kind of an emotional year. If there is anything. What's that? Yeah, we're gonna do that, not under, yeah, we'll do that. Yeah, we'll do that under, superintendent's report, if that's okay, yep. Yeah, so just so everybody knows, if there is any, for some reason, we have any comments or anything relative to anything else on the agenda relating that's going to damage anybody's reputation, those comments would have to go into executive session. Just want to let everybody know that, and so we'll move on from there. So resignations, appointments, what action will M.S.A.D. Board of School Directors take to elect the chair?
I'd like to make a motion to do a written ballot, please.
Okay.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Mott, seconded by Mr. Umar. Written ballot, okay?
I did.
Thank you.
So we need to make a motion for somebody, and then a motion for somebody else, and then we do a written ballot. You have to
Do
have
we need
both.
to make a motion to accept this written ballot? Or no?
I don't think we have to, it's
Okay,
just,
that's cool.
if anybody wants to
We
take a
just-
written ballot, you can.
Under, yeah.
But
under-
we have to make a motion to move for people, and then you make a vote from there, so.
So I'll make a nomination, Jenny Boyden.
So it's a move by Mr. Dumont, seconded by Mr. Calvary. For Jenny. Anything else? Anybody else? Sure.
I will nominate Sean.
I'll second.
So moved and seconded for me, and moved by Jenny, seconded by Ms. Kumar. Anybody else? So I will cease nominations then, and we'll take a written ballot.
That's my legal name.
So it totaled 608 for Jenny and 395 for Sean.
608.
Which totals the 1,003 that you guys have for me.
Yeah.
Okay, yep. So the results are Jenny Boyden is chair. 608 to 395. I'll let you take over from here.
Jenny's like, congratulations, Jenny.
Thank you. So we're all good with that action as it was?
Yep.
Okay. So what action will the Board of School Directors take to elect a vice chair?
I nominate Sean Knox.
I second.
I'd rather not.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll nominate Danielle.
Second.
Are there any other nominations? No, seeing none. All those in favor of Danielle as vice chair? I'm sorry, I have to do the counting. I'm all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 12. Opposed? Really? You want me to put 1?
Yes, you can put 1.
Abstain, 0. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And you kicked me, I would have voted against you just so you could
Oh,
have one.
I should have.
I mean, seriously.
What action will the Board of School Directors take to elect a representative to the Mid-Maine Vocational Center Governance Board?
I nominate Mute Clatterly.
I second.
Nominated by Carr, seconded by Roy. All those in favor of Neil for the Vocational Center? Opposed? Abstain? 0. 12, 0, 1. Congratulations, Neil. What action will the Board of School Directors take to elect a negotiations committee? Just as a note, it is in our bylaws and has been in our bylaws that we will elect a negotiations committee.
Yes.
So we would be seeking
Who's-
some members to participate on that.
Okay. So what contract is up? Because teachers isn't up till next year, correct?
Tech 3. Yeah, Tech 3.
So Tech 3s is the one that we would be negotiating. When does the negotiation start?
We haven't been notified yet. They notify us.
Yeah.
I'll nominate Carr.
Thanks, Jeff.
You're welcome.
And other people can be involved in this. It's just by way of making sure somebody is.
Making sure there's a person.
Person.
Fantastic. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations? Seeing none. All those in favor of Barb Kugelmeyer as negotiations committee lead? Twelve. All those opposed? Abstain. 12, 0, 1. Will the M.S.A.D 49 Board of School Directors vote to amend the school board bylaws, section 1, by adding, in quotations, first and? Included in your packet was a marked up version of the bylaws. This one doesn't actually have an underline in section 1, but this pertains to the very first sentence of our bylaws, which were changed last year so that we were only holding meetings on the third Thursday of the month, and this reverts back to the meetings being on the first and third Thursday of the month.
Second.
So moved by Jeff and seconded by Kara to accept adding first and, to the section 1 of the bylaws. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's unanimous, 13, 0, 0. Will the M.S.A.D 49 Board of School Directors vote to amend the school board bylaws, section 5, by striking the word chairman and adding chair, striking the phrase four-year term for 2018-2019, then for 2019-2020, forward chair will have a, and adding consecutive one-year terms and striking years of consecutive terms. So if you were to look at section 5, this very much simplifies the first paragraph so that it will now read, the chair of the board will have a maximum of 3 consecutive one-year terms.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Danielle, seconded by Tara. Is there any discussion? No? Seeing none, all those in favor? 13, 0, 0. Now, as I am not up on my Robert's Rules of Order, is it okay for me to read that after I read the motion?
Read what?
Like the way I read what was here in the
Yeah, you can
agenda?
update,
And then
yeah.
it's okay for me
Yep.
just to?
Yeah.
Although I will say, I very much appreciate the red line strikeout version. So thank you to whoever did that. The next motion is, will the M.S.A.D. 49 Board of School Directors vote to amend School Board Bylaws, Section 5, by adding committee, striking the first Thursday, adding a minimum, adding one time, adding at the first meeting following the opening of the school year, adding committee meetings shall not be on the same day at the same time, striking each committee shall elect the chair. And what this does is update the third and fourth paragraphs of Section 5 so that it now reads, the 3 standing committees are Finance and Facilities, Policy and Planning, and Educational Programs. All committee meetings shall be open to the public and meet a minimum of 1 time each month. All members of the 3 standing committees shall be voting members. Each standing committee shall elect a board member as chair at the first meeting following the opening of the school year. All board members will be notified of all committee meetings. Committee meetings shall not be on the same day at the same time. Yes.
It also updates the next to last paragraph by striking each committee shall elect a chair, because that's what that wrote.
Correct. Thank you.
I would also make an amendment to have it read the last sentence. Each standing committee shall elect a board member as chair at their first meeting. So because it's not modifying, it's like at the, and it doesn't say which one, so it's not modifying correctly. I know that sounds, but do you get what I'm saying?
Yes.
Thank you.
We have a second. Okay. So moved by Katrina and seconded by Jeff to change the word "the" to "their" in the sentence that ends with "at their first meeting following the opening of the school year," to specify that the elections for chair of the committees will be held at the committee meeting, right at this meeting.
Exactly, rather than having to restate it.
All those in favor of the amendment, vote. 13. Will the M.S.A.D. 49 Board of School Directors, lost track of my flow. Thank you. Motion to accept the changes outlined in section 5 as amended
Yes.
by Tara and Danielle. Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor? 13? 0, 0. Okay.
Oh,
For the agenda.
I don't know.
On the-
Oh, right here, I forgot about that. Yes. We have the, is this a motion?
It is not, we
It's-
just,
oh,
I was gonna
okay.
go into this
Okay.
first.
So a couple of updates. included in your board packet was the schedule of meetings for the upcoming year. It does list all of the meetings that are scheduled. The only committee that does not have their meetings scheduled by day for the rest of the year at this point is the educational programs. So as those are scheduled, we'll be able to update this document, but this does outline for us the committee meetings, the regular board meetings, and the locations and times of those meetings for the remainder of the school year.
There was one edit, the June 18th. Instead of Clinton, usually we have our celebration.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So the recommendation is the Lawrence Junior High School for that
Yes.
one event.
So we'll update that. Yes?
Roberta, were you gonna choose the dates for the educational committee?
What does the board wish?
Yes.
Monday or Tuesday?
Monday, how about a Monday?
Yeah, Monday is preferred.
Monday on the off week,
So on the
the
second
second.
or the
Yeah.
fourth?
Yeah,
The second week?
yeah.
So the educational programs committee meetings will be on the Mondays of the second week. Location to be.
What time?
Stay with 6 o'clock as the other committees are meeting.
Is that, okay, does that
Yeah.
work? Katie, does that work for you?
I'm actually on policy, so it doesn't really matter. I was just
Oh, all right,
curious.
Danielle, does that work for you? Okay. I mean, I'd like to do 6:30 personally, because it gives me a little bit more wiggle room for some other commitments I have. Is that,
I think that, in my opinion, would be that the committee can.
all right, so maybe,
Pinpoint,
work that out.
yeah,
As long as it's, posted and publicly known when and where the committee will be meeting. I think that's fine. It'll be nice to update it on our schedule once you guys have decided.
I leave it to you, it's fine, it's up to 6:30.
We'll get to our sign-ups in a bit.
Yeah, excellent.
So are you gonna update the time on this? Would there be a time on the sheet, or just be to be determined, I guess?
I think it would be to be determined until they have their first meeting and can decide on the time.
Sure.
That works for everyone.
And the location is determined
Oh,
by,
good point. Yeah.
determined by them,
That's
maybe.
good point. All right, 6 o'clock. so, yeah.
I'm thinking, because it's already set up, and policy met last year in the junior high library, it's public enough, there's no setup, so we're not asking custodial staff right now, we're gonna be set up for board meetings anyway. If that works, and we'll just, be well publicized. Yeah, okay with that?
And the junior high library worked out very well.
Yeah, so nice. That's what we used to
Yes, higher.
That's when we're here, you mean? Wait, I might have lost
The
you.
education committee,
Okay, sorry. never mind.
just Mondays,
That
that group.
Yeah.
Carry on.
Right.
Yeah, this is just for the M.S.A.D Fall Conference, October 24th and 25th. On the 24th at 2:30, there's, the last page of your packet, there's a delegate assembly. It references what the delegate would do. And the district needs to submit who the delegate is and the alternate is to M.S.A.D for that conference. So anybody that's interested in going to the conference, we would notify Ms. Brown, and she would, and then the board should elect or have some sort of idea who those delegates would be, and one delegate and one alternate.
In the past, there was a date, there was a deadline we needed to let people know by. What's the deadline again?
Registration.
Yeah,
As soon as possible, it's a late October event, but I'll bet they take registrations up until
I think it's like the 19th or something like that.
We could all let Jane know whether or not we can attend, and
By next meeting?
I would, yes, because I think that the delegate needs to be ahead of
Yeah.
everything. Yep,
Yeah,
pretty
okay.
sure.
So do we need to move that motion, to table this motion?
It's not a motion, it's a.
Oh, okay. Oh, right, sorry, carried over fast.
Never. And then committee reports, there are none, as people have been meeting. No committee reports. So superintendent's reports.
So I'll begin with some updates in statutes, new laws coming into effect that will affect the schools. And we had, I don't know if we discussed it, but I had mentioned there are amendments to the teacher evaluation process, the educator effectiveness statute, that it actually affects the evaluation of teachers and principals. And the part that is changing is the requirement for SLOs to be part of the composite final evaluation score, if you will, or rating. And that's going to take effect 2021, but they'll be in rulemaking, the DOE 2020. So we will need to, it doesn't prohibit the use of student learning objectives as part of the system, but it doesn't mandate it any longer. And we will need to reconvene with our stakeholder group and go through a process and a discussion about that. Right now, it is a good portion of that final rating, if you will, and I'm doing this, it's built into a pretty complex matrix. So that's something for future discussion. Also beginning for hires, new hires of 2021 school year, the probationary period is back down to 2 years and it had been bumped up to 3 years. And I guess the other one that I would like to mention for a future discussion, I intend to put it on the next board agenda, is the Regional Service Center. And there's been a loosening, I guess it's not so prohibitive to join. It's easier in, easier out now. There had been penalties at one time for not joining. There are some funds that will come back to us if the board decides to join, and ours would be logically, and maybe you've read about the feature in the paper, the Kennebec Alliance. The alliance itself will dissolve. We are now part of that, and we share bids, say, and related to paper products and food products, among other things, but it's an opportunity to share in some staff development, substitute training. We had safety care training here for our district staff. That's maybe something that can be resourced locally. So we'll talk more about it and what it means financially for us, prospectively for 21. But there is some money that might come back our way, a pretty significant amount of money. And we have until November to adopt this and join, so we have plenty of time to discuss it. But locally, RSU 18 had initiated it. I had attended a couple of the meetings, one with a former superintendent and one in that person's stead in July most recently. And I think Waterville and Winslow have recently adopted it, probably during their first cycle of their regularly scheduled board meetings at the beginning of the year. So anyway, we'll hear some more about that on the 19th. So I had a great conversation today with Mr. Bowers and Ms. Katie with the JMG teacher. And she's spoke with me about this opportunity, and it was in place last year as well, sponsored by the Somerset Economic Development Corporation. It's called Improving Outcome for Youth, and looking to build a workforce, particularly in this county here. But it's abbreviated, it's not a course, it's an activity, a program for students. She intends to schedule it for block 4. And as students who are in study hall, so they're not going to receive academic credit, but they'll have experiences, tutoring for support in curriculum, computer skills, some soft skills in interacting, interviewing, completing resumes, some financial literacy, and some mentoring with area businesses. So it's a great opportunity at no cost to the school district. It's sponsored by this Somerset Economic Development. So that's good news. And at some point in the future, I would like for Ms. Wood to come and share the entire program with the board. We talked about expanding the backpack program to the elementary settings. And we're going to have discussions with principals just through our agreement with the Fairfield Food Pantry, which is ultimately through the Good Shepherd Food Bank out of Auburn. So it's been a pretty successful program, but we're looking to get meals into the homes of children in our elementary schools. And not that that's not happening, but this is a great resource. I also, just to call your attention to this addendum for what has occurred, and I went back from the last June meeting. So since then, the new hires, the appointments, and the resignations, just for your awareness, this is what's transpired in these intervening months. And if I could just read just very briefly, this is historically what was done. I think it's instructive for the board, just on the appointment of teachers in elementary settings. So we get Chelsea Ballard was hired as a second grade teacher at Clinton Elementary. She has a BS in education from the University of Maine Farmington, and her experience was as a student teacher in RSU 9. Matt Borman, part-time physical education teacher, I think it's a day a week, shared between Benton and Clinton. He has a BS in kinesiology and physical education from UMaine, and he has worked part-time at Fayette Elementary. And he had also done, several years ago, some long-term substituting in our school district, PE. Ben Cloutier, junior high science teacher, he's a BS from the University of Maine Farmington, and he's been a substitute at Mount Blue High School. Cheryl Coffin, Clinton grade 6 teacher, BS in elementary education from UMaine, and a BS in library sciences from the University of Maine Augusta, and has taught at Winslow and Monmouth for 5 years. And Alyssa Fly, Benton Special Education Functional Life Skills, BA in dance from Dean College, and of course certification in the field. She's been hired in special education teacher at Waterville and Augusta schools for the past 4 years. Danielle Merciers, Benton grade 1 teacher, BA in early childhood education from the University of Maine Farmington. She's been a teacher at Waterville for the past 9 years. Justin Power, Lawrence Junior High Social Studies, BS in Education, Social Studies from secondary education, concentration in social studies from UMaine Farmington. Been a substitute teacher in area districts for 2 years. Tristan Stockford, high school math, education, BS, elementary education, mathematics from the University of Maine Farmington. Been a math teacher at Coney High for 2 years. Kristen Tripp, high school social studies teacher, BA in history, BS in secondary social studies from UMaine Farmington, and has taught ELA in social studies at Maine Virtual Academy the past 4 years. Neil Young, high school social studies teacher with BA in political science from the University of Southern Maine, and taught social studies at Rockland High School. Oceanside. Is like, no, it's not Rockland. And last year, and worked at Vinyl Haven School for 2 years prior. And also, Dan McCarthy, because as you can see on the resignations, Marissa DeCou resigned late this summer. And we have hired Dan McCarthy back. He's come out of retirement, and we thank him for it. He's a certified librarian who's served as a librarian at Lawrence High School for many years. So thank you. That is who we have for right now. We have a couple of positions we're in the process of filling, but thanks to the administrators, including our special ed director, who's done a lot of work and put in many, many hours trying to pull all this together and bring the best quality people to our students. It's been an effort, but it's well worth it. And yes,
Could you just update us where you are on the hiring of the assistants?
Okay, so we've conducted a couple of interviews, and we have one more scheduled, and by the next board meeting on the 19th, I will nominate someone to you for your consideration, so there'll be an interview scheduled for that night. Okay? All right. And also, calling upon the principal, we had a very interesting opening, I think, on Friday before the very opening of school, the Kennebec Water District. We were notified mid-morning, I was notified, that potentially they were going to shut the water off on West Street. And we intended to convene as a district staff in the auditorium with some comments, and then some other work, and teachers were going back to their schools. So we confirmed it later in the day that yes, indeed, they were going to do that on Tuesday. So thankfully, it wasn't on the Monday, which allowed teachers their classroom spaces to prep, and it wasn't going to be on Wednesday when our, at least in this complex, 7th and 9th graders were arriving. So we worked around that. Thank you to the principals and Benton, particularly for hosting the junior and senior high. I'm running this, thank you. And also we have some reports about openings. I've heard great things, and we have some happy children back in the flow of things, but we'll just, if we could begin with Lori Lee for Albion and Fairfield.
Certainly. As Albion is welcoming in a pre-K class for the first time, we decorated the front halls with pineapples this year. At the opening assembly, I spoke about the origin of the pineapple as a sign of welcome beginning in colonial times, as it was considered both a rare and beautiful universal symbol of welcome and hospitality. The sweet pineapple is a sign of who we are as a school, and it's symbolic for us as we help spread kindness to one another, and especially to our new friends, returning students, new students in kindergarten and pre-K. This year, we're also going to try to be like a pineapple and share and hearing about the sweet things students are doing for one another all around Albion Elementary. The Albion Kindergarten is on their 3rd day of school, and next week our new pre-K class will begin. It was a wonderful sight to see our new families come to our school's open house as they stayed the entire time all together in the pre-K classroom, making new family friends. And Fairfield Primary has 97 kindergarten students. They began the year on Tuesday and are getting quickly acclimated to the new school year. Students that had already been at Fairfield for pre-K were seen helping their new friends as resident experts. Our Fairfield pre-K class held their open house on Wednesday, yesterday, from 4:30 to 6:30, and parents that had not yet signed up on Infinite Campus worked with staff to fill in their registration and emergency information, thanks to Lori and the tech department providing us with Chromebooks to be able to do that all together online. We're going to have a great year. Thank you.
Mr. Wedge?
So Benton's also off to a great start. In our theme, we have some honeybees. So as any of you know me, I'm very excited about honeybees, and I'm thankful for Pat Walson for you walk in. We have some wonderful bulletin boards near our office, and that was kind of the theme as we got it. We began. We had our open house. Our Bulldog Boutique was up and running that our guidance counselors run. We've had many donations of clothing and other items throughout the summer, which we're very thankful for, and those were available to students and families that were accessing it. We also had fresh vegetables from our school garden that we started last spring, and we had a basket out of a variety of items, so that was very exciting. It was also the grand opening of our story walk. That's been a it's a project we've been working on for over a year now, and it was installed over the summer, and I'm very thankful to our operations crew, and Scott and Brad were able to really make it happen this summer. So there are 19 stands around our property, and the story is The King of Bees, which is a wonderful story about honeybees. And Dennis Bubar, who was a recovery teacher that retired last year, is also a beekeeper, and I'll greatly miss our conversations together, but he and his wife came and actually had a stand at the, and we had an observation hive, and we had all of our beekeeping equipment out there. And so it was an exciting experience for the students and families as they went to open house. And also, our PTO had a great, we had a great response from the community from our PTO. Our PTO had a great response from our community. I think it was Amy was sharing with me that we had the most, largest number of volunteers and signups with phone numbers, and there was just a lot of excitement about engagement with the PTO, with a lot of our incoming first grade families, so we're very excited about that. We had our fall photos were taken Tuesday, and it was light touch. It went very smoothly. There are a lot of volunteers that make that happen, and so I'm thankful for all those many hands that showed up. And I'm also excited to share Lisa Roy reached out to New Balance for donations, and they've been the past several years they've been making a donation. This is one of the largest ones yet. We received 115 pairs of sneakers and 56 apparel items for a total value of $6,280.
Wow.
So we're distributing those. And finally, we are having a special guest come to Benton, Albion, and Clinton. His name is Brian Williams. He's known as the Kindness Ninja, and he's known nationally. And he's coming to speak to our students on the 18th. So he's going to do 2 assemblies at Benton, and then go to the other schools. And for Benton, it's going to kick off kind of our Kindness Challenge for the year, and that's actually sponsored by our PTO. So we're excited about that opening assembly. And finally, our school council meeting, our first one will be held on Monday, September 16th, and I'll give an update about that later. Thank you.
So our year got off to a fabulous start as well. The kiddos were welcome to a new playground look. Our PTO folks and a few of our staff members took some time over the summer to paint new hopscotch boards and some foursquares and twister and just some little squiggly lines on the ground that the kindergartners love to try to follow around. So very, very, very colorful. So we were very excited about that. Our PTO president even spent hours upon hours upon hours to put up new basketball hoops and backboards that the PTO had purchased, and cut through welds and more welds and more welds, and the sweat dripping off this man, but the PTO is fabulous and they do anything for our kiddos up there. So the students were all welcomed back to all of those wonderful things on the playground, so we're really, really grateful to all of them for doing that. Our open house was also an overwhelming success, as Lori and Brian have shared with their schools. We had 81% of our families in attendance this year, which is the highest since I've been there. We've been in the mid to high 70s, and this will be my 7th year. So we were very excited to hit that 80% mark. Our own Lori Faulkner here and our computer instructor Camden Davis actually provided 2 sessions for parents around Infinite Campus and how to find their way around that, and also internet literacy. And we didn't have quite the turnout we would hope to have, but we're hoping to duplicate that at some point in time and try to drum up some more interest around that. So we were very thankful for them for doing that. And our first few weeks have gone extremely well. We welcomed our pre-K and our kindergarten kiddos, and we only had one that we had to ship to Fairfield that came to Clinton and found their way to Fairfield, and we got that all taken care of. So that was the first. You know, you always say what else can happen. Well, it happened this year. So, but the little guy did great and found his way back to Fairfield. But everyone's doing really well. And looking forward to a fabulous year. So thank you. Thank you.
I feel like I'm going to repeat what the elementary principal said, but just in junior high form. So our 7th graders, their first day was before the 8th graders, and they quickly are learning how the junior high flows, and our 8th graders are now our veterans at our school, so it's been a very successful opening. As Mr. Wedge said, his school received a donation from New Balance. We did as well. We're very, very appreciative of what they do donate to us. For the junior high, they donated 82 pairs of shoes for a $3,280 value. They told us that they have another few boxes of apparel coming to us, so they'll give us a call and we'll pick them up, and we'll have some apparel for those kids and families that are in desperate need of some clothing and some footwear. So we're just very appreciative of New Balance and what they do offer for the district and our schools. We had a very successful open house. I don't have numbers, but you know, the doors open at 5:30, closed at 7:30. We had a steady flow of parents almost all night, and past 7:30, probably the most we've had in quite some time. And it was more of an open house format, so the students would bring their schedules, or would print off their schedules, they grab their families, they go and just kind of pop in and out of classrooms, meet the teachers, have a meet and greet time. Teachers were very supportive of the format, and the parents had a very positive review of it, so we're very pleased with our open house, very successful. And finally, our co-curricular activities have begun, mostly sports. Practices start this week, and league games will start next week. Is that right, Mr. Pat? That's correct. So we're excited. A lot of kids signed up and are involved, so we're very pleased with that.
Yeah, we started off, and the feedback I've got has been very good as far as students go, parents. We had an open house, and probably for us, the majority of the kids coming or the parents were freshmen, which is predictable. You know, the athletes have been there 2 weeks prior. You know, that's going strong. Mr. Jones came up with a good acronym. We met with, when the freshmen came in, we had a class meeting with the freshmen and just went over some stuff, try to orient them to the high school. But the acronym is DOGS for Destination One Great School, so we talked to each class about that. And you know, he and I met with the classes individually on opening day Thursday with the upperclassmen, and prefer to do that rather than meet one big, huge body, so it was more intimate, and I just introduced myself and let them know my background, and you know, we went through modified schedule for both days. I think it was well received by the kids. We seem to be off to a smooth start. Just going down through here. On our orientation day, we had the National Guard in. They set up a big inflatable obstacle course, so we coincided that with lunch, so that seemed to work out well. And then the new staff, we've already gone over. Oh, the homeroom buddies. We've got seniors that are helping out and shadowing the homerooms for the freshmen, so they helped us out on freshman orientation day, and they're also staying with them, and they'll be a big part helping to just kind of orient them to homecoming activities, which will be later in October. But they're also, we're incorporating them to help get the announcements out, so it's not just Mr. Jones or I being on intercom in the morning. We have the homeroom buddies come down, so that's going well. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you all. Report. The only other business we have is committee signups, so I think we can do those once the general members can go around and sign up on the paper. We have the same 3 committees that we have had in the past. If anyone wants to stay on the committee that they were on before, they're welcome to. And now, because they won't be meeting concurrently, as they did last year, if you would like to serve on more than one committee, you are certainly welcome to do that. So please sign up on the form before you leave. And if everybody agrees to that, then I would accept the motion to adjourn.
I think that since we did elect a new chair tonight, we'd be remiss not to thank
Oh,
Mr.
yeah.
Knox for all of his countless hours of hard
Absolutely.
work.
You're welcome.
Since April.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well done, John.
Well done.
Now I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Jeff and Kara, any discussion? All those in favor? 13? Adjourned.